All right, so this video, I better turn my music down. Just give me a second. Okay, there we go. So, um, I'm gonna. This is a conclusion video. So I did a lot of research today about what to do on my hardware. I have some like 16 Mac Minis and some like 30 Raspberry Pis and 3 MSI Trident gaming systems with good GPUs in them. That's just leftover hardware from when I ran at school. Skillstack.io. And I have been trying to decide what to do with it. I have it all, in kind of a makeshift IKEA rack that I built out of IKEA stuff. I mean, come on, it's not very pretty, but it's got stickers and stuff. But it's just this thing, and I've been trying to decide what to do with it and what to put on it, and whether I should do anything with it at all. And now that we're going to be here in this apartment for another year at least, um, it's probably time for me to start doing something with that hardware. Uh, Rather than just move it or buy it, replace it with something else. And this is in addition to the Kubernetes work that I am uh, doing, on my, personal virtual machines in kind. And then we talk about that a lot. I have an entire learning Kubernetes co-learning thing that I do on Friday from 12 to 3 if you want to watch that. Plus, there's a whole playlist of videos that are just long and drawn out. But it's all the discoveries and everything I'm doing while I'm trying to learn Kubernetes myself. Having done, infrastructure engineering and a lot of software development, kind of, bridging the gap between those two things a lot. So what's up with Talos? So Talos was mentioned to me by Billy, one of my coworkers, and uh, early on when I finally started getting a handle on Kubernetes and understanding what it was about, it started to become really apparent that this Kubernetes processing and this approach to the world, everything's being managed under the Kubernetes umbrella. And once you start buying into it, you see the orchestration and the declarative syntax and how everything auto heals and all this jazz. You start to go, oh my God, this is big. It's like Kubernetes is the computer, they say. But except for it's not, right? Because they got all this hardware that still has to be managed independently. You got filled logs, you got security flaws, you got Red Hat or Ubuntu or something running that's the host OS that's running, all the stuff that makes your machine into a node, namely, it's got a container engine, it's got a kubelet and a kubeadm running all on it. And when those things are, and the proxy, sorry, and when those things are all running on it, then it becomes, a node. And I don't want to go into detail on that. You can watch other videos about what a Kubernetes node is. But a Kubernetes node is a machine running all the software necessary for it to talk and communicate over the Kubernetes API to Kubernetes, the mothership, which is the control plane on the master nodes. Anyway, so as soon as I finally got my head around that a little bit, I'm like, well, why don't we just put the operating system in there too? And then we just manage everything, right? And it turns out that in 2014, no, actually 2018, 2019, that people have started to like really aggressively pursue this as a thing. They were already pursuing it, and I actually during the middle of all this, I also evaluated Proxmox, and I was watching another streamer earlier today, last night actually, who was using another thing like Proxmox to manage a bunch of hardware so here's the process if you're doing a containerized world. So I'm going to describe two things really quick as fast as I can. So let's say you got a bunch of old hardware or new hardware in your enterprise, right? And you want to deal with it without having to reinstall and update the operating system on every single server like we used to have to do in 1997. That's done. We don't do that anymore, right? And even back then, you could like net boot, and if you had a refresh change, you just rebooted the computers and then they'd get your security changes, et cetera, provided nobody actually did anything to the computer, which meant that your persistence and your disk storage and everything had to not be directly on it because it might get, wipe it off, or you'd have to partition it properly, blah, blah, blah. It's a pain in the butt, right? It still is a pain in the butt. And there are lots of solutions in that area that don't have anything to do with Kubernetes. So I forget the name of it. There's one that, this new streamer, I forget his name, God damn it. There's another Twitch streamer. Go keep looking in Science and Tech, and you'll find him. I promise I'll get you his name. And he does this professionally, and he was using. God, I want to say it starts with NG. I wasn't planning on putting this in the conversation today. And then somebody in the stream mentioned Proxmox. So Proxmox is another. I have to talk to you about this so you can understand my decision making process. Which has all been written up in my ad nauseum in my Zellicastans if you want to go read it there. But if you go to Proxmox, so and uh, so this is kind of an alternative to OpenStack. OpenStack is all these things do is you take a computer to this. So I got a Mac Mini, right? You take your Mac Mini, and you download a USB image, and you boot the machine with that image, right? Or you set it up to network boot with that image, and it gets that image and runs in a RAM disk, so the operating system has full access to all the hardware. That means it can, and then that's it. That's it. And then it phones home up to the mothership and says, "Hey, I have this unprovisioned hardware. It's called bare metal. There's another thing called Metal 3, which is another. So there's Proxmox, there's Metal 3, there's OpenStack. There's all of these ways to manage just the hardware. And what you do is you put this minimal hypervisor on there. And there's two types of hypervisors. We won't get into it. There's bare metal hypervisors, type 1, I think, and type 2, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, but which is software emulated. And that's what these things do. I'm getting stuck on that, but so in the for the longest time in the virtualization, but pre-Kubernetes world, people were doing all this stuff already. That's where OpenStack got really popular, because it was already saying, "Hey, I've got all this hardware, but I want to treat it like it's Amazon, or I want to treat it like it's GCP. I want to build my own cloud, right?" So that's what cloud OpenStack is, and it's been that way for a long time. OpenStack apparently runs anything that talks. I think it's IPL, which is this Python thing that has the phone on. I was like, oh, I don't want to use that. And there are people that still use all of those methods to provision their hardware independent of Kubernetes, and then they put Kubernetes stuff on top of that. So they kind of layer in terms of an architecture for a home. Say you've got 20, 50, 100 machines at home, and they would install whatever they would install the minimum hypervisor on all of those machines, and then they would put a layer of virtual machine manager software like Proxmox or OpenStack on top of that, and then on Kubernetes would be on top of that, and then that would manage all of those systems as if they were Kubernetes. But then if they wanted to, they could say, I only want these machines to be Kubernetes, and I want these other machines over here to be whatever. They could be batch or something like that. So there's kind of multiple layers to how you would deploy your IT, and that's how most shops, a lot of shops do that now. At work, in our particular workplace, we have so many driver configurations that we do, and I wrote about this, about why the unsexy OSs are sometimes best to host Kubernetes, because we have so many driver dependencies, sometimes brand new drivers that NVIDIA gives us directly before anybody else, that may not play nicely in any other sort of automated virtual machine provisioning. I don't know. I'm new to that kind of space. So, okay, but I have to give you that whole background before I can talk to you about this thing called Talos, which I just found out about. It's been highly recommended. It's kind of the talk of the town right now. It hasn't hit mainstream, but I got to tell you, I have been overwhelmed with positive impressions by this software. And you guys know, if I don't like something, I will tell you. But so far, this has been a glorious experience in a lot of insignificant ways, and I've written about them. So what this is, and it got renamed, it's Sidero. That just happened this week, by the way, and they're at KubeCon right now. KubeCon's going on right now. And I want to also compliment their quick response time. I joined their Slack today. I wrote this little blog sort of post about them and put it on Twitter. And I came back and checked out my thing, and Katie Patterson, like within an hour, by the time I got back from my run, had already reached out to me and said, "Hey, I work here at Talos. Thank you very much for bringing up part of our project. We're developing some new open source project. We'd love to get your feedback on it. Can you talk for 10, 20 minutes or something?" I mean, come on. How awesome is that? They are so on top of everything. I mean, they do have a company that's running kind of running open core business model like everybody these days. And so I have nothing to do with them. I said openly in my blog post so that I am so impressed so far by everything about Talos that it's short of some massive problem. I'm like really on board. I mean, I'm like, this is freaking awesome. Am I on board enough to put it in my enterprise and say, hey, we should do this for our next cluster? Maybe not, because I don't know what it's going to do with all of our customizations with NVIDIA drivers and stuff. But I'm super encouraged by it. So what makes it so cool? And I'm going to go through the things that I think make Sidero so cool. It's actually Sidero. This is a god. They even talk about it. So the first thing I'm super impressed with is that the first thing that they list is security. So Talos OS is fully immutable from the boot to shutdown. That means it runs in a RAM disk and you cannot access it except through the API. That means there's nothing to hack. So unneeded dependencies, instant security, it's immutable. That means every time it boots up, you get a new one. And if you do a netboot, and they have a netboot image already built, they already have a netboot image. So you just have to set up your netboot server, and then you tell your BIOS on your computer, boot your computer into the BIOS and say, hey, do a netboot, and it'll go grab it. I don't know if my Mac Minis are going to do netboot. That'd be a long shot, but we'll see. So, and it's consistent even if your Kubernetes environment spans multiple platforms, blah, blah, blah. All right. I read a whole thing about how they have multi-GPU support built in, and I haven't got the chance to test that yet. But it runs bare metal. So how does this whole thing work, and what's the point of it? So this is the process, okay? So you download, in my case, I'm going to be setting up a network boot server, step one, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to have all of my machines, including Raspberry Pi, boot from, they have full ARM support, by the way. I'm going to go ahead and do all of those things, and then what? Then we're going to boot those machines into it, and then it has a web interface that you can use. They also have a command line API, which I haven't played with yet, that can go right. And you're going to see lots of videos from me on Talos. So this is just the first one, and then you can just it has a Kubernetes already in it. So then you start to use, I think it's Talos CTL. You can use Talos CTL. You can use cluster CTL because it has cluster support, has a cluster provider support. And if you don't know about that, I did a whole video on cluster API, which came out 1.0, came out officially this week, last week actually. And so that's the new thing. This year, 2021 is really, in 22 is really the years of bare metal integration into Kubernetes. And so you have a choice, and this is all in this video right now. And I'll tell you why I made my choice the way I did. But this is the choice. If whether you're a hobbyist and you have a ton of leftover computers that you just want to organize and just be able to re-provision them in any way and have them do whatever, or you're a small business or you're a large business, and you have this hardware and you don't know how to do this, you have to make a decision. Do I go the VM provisioning route, which is kind of old school, or do I fully buy into this new fangled Kubernetes hardware provisioning and basically get past all the problems with infrastructure provisioning and start to pick hardware and stuff that will work that way, and solutions that work? And that's a big decision, right? In fact, in my case, we have a separate department who does just infrastructure stuff that's related to the hardware. Imagine that this, if you're, this is extremely disruptive technology because we're now talking about getting rid of the system administrators. And I'm not exaggerating. If you are just booting a piece of hardware off of a network boot image that has not had a lot of crazy extra devices involved, then all of the configuration of that device now becomes a Kubernetes operation. In fact, it is an operator. It's they have an operator for the whole thing, and you do kube control cluster X or Y, or kube control machine this or that. So there's a couple of things to conclude here. The first one is this is where it's going. I'm 100% convinced that within 2 or 3 years, all of the IT enterprise, including small mom and pop shops, are going to be Kubernetes as a machine. In other words, Kubernetes is your IT department. It doesn't mean that you're mainframed. It just means you have a common interface. It'll be interface-driven IT. And this is the last piece of this. It also has decidedly destroyed functional Lambda sort of approach in the serverless movement, which just caught me off guard. I didn't expect that to happen. Because this has got far more to offer, because it's so interesting. I mean, you can still deploy those things within a Kubernetes environment, but then the whole thing is just turnkey. So my decision at home is I'm going to be putting Talos on everything, um, and see where it goes. I couldn't use Proxmox. I'm going to tell you right now. Proxmox required KVM, which KVM requires a Type 1 hypervisor, which means it has to be supported with the hardware. And my mini Mac Minis are too old to do it, and Raspberry Pi doesn't support it at all. So that left me with a bunch of Python crap with OpenStack for that's like now what, 10, 12 years old. OpenStack, all the tech stack in OpenStack is like 10 or 12 years old at this point. It's really prevalent out there, but OpenStack's kind of like the Java of cloud. It's like it's out there everywhere, and you have to know how to do it. I'm not choosing to do that, but if you want to know where this is going, Talos OS or Sidero. This kind of thing, I think, is going to be the future, and they're the first. I mean, there's the K3 OS project, which decided strategically to not implement all of Kubernetes, which I think is a massive mistake. I think that was a huge mistake for them to do that. I Which is hardware agnostic, absolutely. So what I call software abstraction layer, or even secure abstraction layer. It absolutely is. It's basically distributed mainframe. I know that's a really weird thing to say. It seems like an oxymoron, but that's what's happening. What we're getting is Borg, Hive, we're getting distributed mainframe. So you want to add more resources, just plug in a computer and put the agent on it, you're done. And this is starting to be a thing across the board all over the place. And then it's just your whole IT department's really turnkey at that point. It's like you want to redeploy a different operating system, fine, right? And since we have virtual machines and KubeVirt and a bunch of stuff that are running VMs inside of Kubernetes now, you can use your VM. You can stick your chocolate and peanut butter, like a little Reese's advertisement. It's like, do you want your chocolate and your peanut butter, or your peanut butter and chocolate? It's like they're all mixed up now, and they're all running really fast. Because they all ultimately are using the hardware acceleration now that's built in with Type 1 hypervisors. So this is where I'm going. So my decision is, at least at home, is to be ready for the OS integration. And I personally believe that whether or not you learn Talos CTS or you learn Talos CTL or container CTL or OS CTL, there's a bunch of these new CTLs coming up that are hardware and bare metal related. And there's another one is Metal 3, which is built on Ironic, which is built under the OpenStack project, which that probably is going to become an enterprise standard. But that's I don't know. It's going to be interesting, because that's for companies that don't want to just make their endpoints nodes, Kubernetes nodes. That's for companies that want the option of making their machines into non-Kubernetes machines. But I don't think that's going to last. Honestly, I don't. I mean, if you want more control, if you need it, I think we do need it. But the thing that I want to do this for, and I want to test, this is why I want to do the Talos stuff fundamentally, is because if it turns out that I don't know yet, but if Talos will let me add device drivers and add other stuff to the base image, the boot image, and pull down device drivers and stuff that are customized, that I want these systems to have, then, and that's going to be my first question for Katie when we talk, can I add the customizations that are required for this edge hardware support that I have going on? Because if not, companies that are in the high performance computing space and stuff like that, my biggest fear with this turnkey kind of idea is that it's not going to support everything, or if it gets a security problem wrong, right? I mean, and then you can't go fix it yourself, right? You're stuck using whatever they have. Now, if there is a problem and you're doing a net boot, then the fix is what? The fix is you pull down the image, you put it on your boot server, and then you incrementally reboot all your machines. Boom, problem solved. And they drain themselves and they do all that stuff automatically because it's all integrated. See, the thing that's really missing from the whole containerized layer, the virtual machine cloud, and then having Kubernetes on top of that, the thing that's really missing from that is the coordination of rebooting stuff. So for example, if you're going to reboot a node because you got an operating system security issue, you want to operate the drivers, what do? Well, in Kubernetes, you have to drain that node. You have to cordon it off so that it's not connected anymore, and and all that work goes to the other nodes while it's rebooting. And Kubernetes has no way to reboot the machine. It's not integrated into it, and then the node needs to be restarted using some other way, and then you restart the node. And when it comes back on, somebody has to get involved again to say, "Oh, hey, Kubernetes, uncordon the node and let's put it back up for work so that it can then get repopulated with container jobs and stuff like that." That gap between the restarting and the updating of the devices on the underlying hardware and in the draining of the containers and everything that has to happen on top of that node, that gap is bad because there's just too many things that could go wrong there. Let's say it goes down and doesn't do it right or something. So it's a natural place to bring together, and the Kubernetes, the container lifecycle team of Cloud Native, they are specifically targeting that problem by integrating it through the cluster API, which was making all kinds of press this week, by doing that kind of thing, because now they can integrate the draining and the cordoning off and the rebooting of the machine, assuming it has a provider, and that means that it's a hypervisor, it's got a container or something inside of it. But the difference between that and Talos is that Talos isn't running in a hypervisor on top of it. Talos is an operating system. So if this is going to get past the problem I have. So far, all of the other providers, as far as I can tell, I could be getting this wrong, but the other providers generally depend on KVM. And I actually found out in 2019, Amazon migrated off of Zen and towards KVM because they only wanted virtual hardware. Zen will do software emulated hypervisor, which is just this base OS that needs to run in order to talk to everything in terms of cloud. And so then they came out with a thing called Nitro. I just found out today, which is a thing that it uses only KVM. And so the industry has really moved away from any old hardware that doesn't support this virtual. But that sucks if you've got Mac Minis at home, right? So what's your option? Because the way I'm trying to say this is the container API. The container API from Kubernetes, it depends on providers, and cloud providers have to provide a provider that takes care of all the translation between the Kubernetes API like stuff and reboot, repartition, blah blah blah, all these hardware driven sorts of things that you normally wouldn't be able to do with Kubernetes. And the way that they're able to do that is because they're assuming that there's a level of abstraction involved, i.e. some sort of hypervisor, type 1 or 2, either one will work. But the thing about Talos that I'm really interested in is there's no hypervisor. So I don't, or if there is a hypervisor, I don't know. That's what I got to find out. So if we have to figure out how Talos does this magic, because this is the reason I'm going with Talos above all. Talos will work with my old Mac Minis and Raspberry Pis. In fact, they have an entire dedicated team just to dealing with ARM Raspberry Pi clusters. Yeah, it's like so stinking cool. So this was the first thing that listed Talos reduce your attack service by the principle of least privilege by causing the API with mutual TLS authentication. So you cannot do anything. You cannot access. It's like very opinionated. It scares the crap out of most people. You can't even access your machines on Talos. The only way you talk to them at all is by using the API. This is the only way. There's no other way to even do anything. And all the stuff that it does, it's completely read-only. So even if somebody were to break through the API, they can't change anything on disk because it's entirely read-only. It's just crazy awesome. They did MPL2 licensing. It's the kind of company that actually really makes me want to work for them. Maybe someday, I don't know. Hopefully I'm not going to be disappointed. I got to tell you though, I feel like a kid in Christmas today finding out about Talos. At first I was like skeptical as usual, but then I got looking into under the covers so far, under the hood, I guess. And I was like, look at this, it does this and that. And I was like, this is is nice. This is cool. So the one thing that I could still be frustrated by would be they're if they're if they're I can only assume they're either using Zen or KVM because I mean a Raspberry Pi doesn't have a hypervisor on it. So they have had to have figured out a way to do that. But honestly, here's the thing. They may be just and this I don't know. This is what I'm going to try to find out. If you guys know, write it in the comments. But I have a feeling that Talos doesn't care about the hypervisor at all. Why? Because it's the entire OS. It's the entire OS. It does not need to be a virtual machine. I actually think that that all of these other cluster API cloud dependencies and everything are going to be dropped eventually because they depend on the hypervisor for the VM that's going to go away. People are going to be like, why do we need a hypervisor anymore? I don't need a hypervisor. I need to, well, that's not true because you can't have a Kubernetes node without it having a container, a container engine, and a container engine, actually, no, a container engine doesn't need a hypervisor. So I don't know enough about it, but so what I'm trying to say is Talos is like, what is Talos? Why Talos? Yeah, it's another one. Yeah, let's go look at that one. So Talos basically just says, yeah, I don't care about all your hypervisor stuff because I am the only operating system on here and the only operating system that ever will be on here. So Talos is an optimized container Linux distro designed to be as bare minimal as possible. Talos has a number of features. It's immutable, atomic, ephemeral, minimal, secure by default. It is managed via a single declarative configuration, and it uses gRPC. When I saw that, I was like, wait a second. The only way you talk to a Talos computer, and this in every sense is a computer, an operating system, right? A computer with an operating system, bare metal. The only way you talk to the thing is through the gRPC API. That just is so stinking cool to me. That's like, that is the most secure you can ever make something on planet Earth. And if you know about DEF CON, some of the keynotes were, I didn't watch them. I heard that they were about, cloud security. So here comes Talos saying, oh, well, we got you. You remember all that stuff about, insecure container mounts and sockets and all that jazz? No, none of it's relevant anymore at all. Because you can't even get to the computer. So what if you broke out of the computer? What if you broke out of your container? Oh no, what have you got? Now you've got an ephemeral, atomic, immutable node that they can't do anything on at all. They can't take it over to do anything else. I don't know why you wouldn't be thinking about this, particularly if you're in the security space. And that's what another thing that really, the Talos people have been thinking about security from the first day. It's not like somebody said, well, you got to run Docker as root. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is, without thinking about the security implications from the first day. No, this entire project has been thinking about security from day one. It can be deployed in a container, cloud virtualization, or bare metal. So this is the other thing too. You can actually test a Talos cluster from a kind cluster, which is running inside of Docker on your Docker desktop. So if you want to check out, the API for Talos, you can do it. Because why? Because it's all API. In fact, the new cool term for me to memorize and use and put out there is API driven IT, or I don't know how to put that, but API driven IT departments. In other words, it's not just about services anymore. You could say, microservices, but it's way bigger than that. It's API driven. In other words, I want a new metal. It's not infrastructure as a service. It's IT as a fucking service. All of IT as a fucking service, everything, and some people would say we already have that with cloud, with Elastic, with Amazon, and a lot of this stuff has been championed by Amazon originally, and then they should probably get the credit. They invented microservices, a bunch of other things. So why Talos is having less? Talos offers more security, efficiency, resiliency, consistency. All of this are important to us, and they are a sandbox project in cloud native. They are, they have not, I don't believe they've gotten much far beyond that. So Talos CTL, if you want to do this, I did this, I have Talos on there. And you can just go ahead and Talos create cluster. As long as you have kubectl, it could be kind, it doesn't matter. It will make you a cluster destroy the cluster. Talos CTL destroy cluster. I'm actually more excited about this than I am the container CTL stuff. Even though I feel like the container CTL stuff, I don't know if it's going to make it on the test or not. I actually asked Taniwa, who knows that kind of stuff, and he said he didn't think it would. It would need to have more mainstream adoption before container OS, container CTL API, cluster API becomes part of the CKA exam. And with stuff like Talos out there, let's just say there's there was if you go back 5-10 years, there was a bunch of unknown things that had to kind of shake out and become the industry standard. Kubernetes was one of them, and now everybody agrees, almost everybody agrees that Kubernetes is the way to go. There's one-offs, people that use Nomad and stuff like that, they don't need Kubernetes, but IT in general has kind of decided, no, Kubernetes, Docker containers are the way to go. Kubernetes is the way to go. And the next decision is to pick one of these bare OS methods. And the race is on, people. The race is on to Kubernetes-ify the bare metal. The race is on to do that. You don't talk to them if you want something, but instead you talk to the API. vSphere salesperson and a lot of administrators probably don't like oh my God, there's this is going to be so disruptive. I'm telling you, it's going to put thousands of people out of jobs unless they retool, unless they reskill. I could not be more happy, not that they're getting to get rid of those jobs, but that I saw this and that I can help other people prepare for this, because the traditional, if you were spending I don't even want to learn Ansible anymore. You guys, you can yell at me all you want. I think things like Ansible and Terraform are going to die. I'm going to predict it right now. What day is it? Today on October 11th, 2021, Mr. Rob predicted that Terraform and Ansible and Chef and all of the provisioning stuff that's out there is going to be irrelevant in 5 years, 5 to 10 years. And if there'll still be some people using it, but I'm telling you, the way things are moving, this race is on for Kubernetes on bare metal. It's on. Rancher OS started the race, and now they got K3 OS. You got micro Kubernetes, which is doing its thing. We're not Ansible to anyone. Yeah, I mean, obviously they're gonna play around and integrate with all those things until they're gone. But if you don't have to provision hardware anymore, and you don't have to spin up different virtual machines and all that shit like you've been doing, if it's just all a Kubernetes node, which is what everybody wants. I tell you what, the CTOs and the pointy haired bosses with the purse strings on the money, that's what they want. They want turnkey IT. So even if they can't make it work now, when they start to see the financial benefit, when they start to see that they can eliminate entire divisions. Look, the reason I can say this is because I worked at IBM and I saw this happen. I actually wrote the software that put hundreds of people out of business because I'm sorry, not out of business, out of a job, because they were system administrators. They were old school system administrators. And we made a thing called Virtual Server Administrator, which did the auditing and the rebooting and stuff. This was way back in early 2000, 2003, back when nobody had that kind of automation and stuff. And so we wrote software to do it. And all of a sudden, all these people that were babysitting servers had no job. I'm not kidding. And they were gone. In fact, when my team finished making the software, I was one of 15 people left over holding the bag because I had to do the support for the stuff. I wrote the APIs, I wrote the network stuff, I wrote the data model. I mean, all that stuff. And so that software, even though that software has been replaced now because it's moved on. Well, the point I'm trying to tell you is that companies don't care about you. They don't care. So if you are not learning containers right now, and if you are not learning Kubernetes, you're going to be irrelevant in 5 years. I swear to God. You can say that that's not true. You can say that, there'll be pockets of people that aren't going to do it and everything. And that's true. Just like there's still people using COBOL today and stuff like that. But I'm telling you, the writing is on the wall. And right now, the race to bare metal is the one to watch. If you want to bet on a horse, literally, like if you're buying stock and money and stuff, and I have no stock at all, I'm fucking broke. I have no money. Sorry, I'm spitting on my screen. I have no money. Okay. Practically no money, but I'm going to tell you this. If I had money right now, I would be betting on Talos because I think I've just barely encountered them, but their initial take and their design initially, I gotta uncover some more things before I fully can say that. But so far, whoever wins this race to bare metal is going to be one of the biggest winners in the entire cloud native enterprise space. And the reason you're going to see all kinds of venture capital thrown at this. Not necessarily Talos, but they just changed, they just rebranded, and they probably got Series A funding. I don't know anything about them. I have nothing to do with them. I haven't even met anybody over there. I just read about them today, honest to God. But and if I were to ever have a financial stake in there, I would tell you immediately. That's just how I am. So learn it. Let's learn it together. And by the way, I'm going to end this video now, but if you know of other people, other companies that are in the race to bare metal, and I would put Rancher OS in that group. Core OS was kind of in that space. I know Red Hat is pushing this heavy. I think Red Hat's missing the boat. I do. I think Red Hat is so focused on most of the other. Okay, so I'm gonna close with this. But what it seems to me is that the people that are in this race, some of them are saying, look, we can't be so aggressive that we throw out the hypervisor entirely. We can't be that aggressive because all of these companies still have cloud and they want to be able to support cloud and virtual machines and all that stuff. But there are a few companies that dare to say, fuck your hypervisor, we're just Kubernetes. And that is going to be very, very, very interesting, because Talos is one of the first ones, I think, unless I think they're probably, I don't know what they're using under the hood. They might be using a KVM under the hood or Zen or something in order to provide it, but they don't need to. And if they don't need to, the companies that are able to say, no, we are going to do one thing and one thing well. We're going to provide a 100% Kubernetes compliant API over gRPC, that we're going to implement management of these machines through a Kubernetes operator, a CRD, and we have nothing in the middle. There's no extra overhead. These people are going to be able to deliver a lot faster. It's like the same reason SolidWorks beat the other one. SolidWorks said, no, we're just going to support Windows only. And the other one said, no, we got to support Mac and all this other stuff. And SolidWorks just kicked their butt because they only had one thing to support. If Talos pulls this off and they say, there's no hypervisor, we have all we're doing, we're just a bare minimum OS who does a really good job of keeping our drivers up to date and making sure we support all the different hardware out there. If they pull that off and they don't also have to deal with supporting all the different forms of hypervisor stuff and everything that goes with it, then they'll already be ahead. They'll be ahead of Red Hat. Red Hat's like holding, as far as I know, Red Hat's kind of holding on to this, well, whatever solution we come up with, it's got to play nice. And so they're holding on to this ironic thing, which is kind of ironic, right? So this ironic is this kind of old tech that a lot of people are still building on because it's built in OpenStack. It's OpenStack's bare metal offering. And there's another thing called Metal 3, which is a project, but they're all using this API, Python API, to do everything. And their claim to fame is that it can be installed on any operating system. So they're still catering to the people who aren't ready to throw out the OS. They're like, no, we still want control of our OS, but if we put this thing on there, it'll we'll put this really powerful agent that'll let us decide what to do with the hardware and stuff like that, as far as I understand. So I'm just a newbie here, and I've probably got a lot of things wrong here because I'm just going through this. But I'm super excited about Talos, and I mean, to the point that I'll just be very open. I'm going to learn everything I can about it, because if it turns out to be what I think it is, not only do I want to use it for my Mac Minis here, but I'm going to do everything in my power to get a job there someday. Because the first negative thing I just saw, shit, people. Can we please use free desktop config directories? I'm going to have to make a commit on that. I mean, come on, really? That's my first negative thing. Maybe that's what I'll end on. So give it a look. I had to make a video because I was so excited about it. And if I missed something, if you feel like you have to, kind of rain on my parade and let me know all the stuff that I don't know, please do it. I welcome it, because I want to help everybody else and learn to kind of catch these waves as they come. It's something I've been doing my whole life. seeing the wave, crest and making sure to paddle at the right time to catch it. And I think bare metal Kubernetes is the thing to catch. Whew. All right. Talk to you guys later. Oh boy.